So, did you have time to go through the case study I shared this morning?
Yeah, yes, madam.
It's very small case, 5-page case. That is for case study or for having lunch? Shall we wait or shall we go ahead with the session?
Please continue. Please continue, ma'am. We are on time.
Okay, thank you. So we are on time. Let's not waste the time of 40 of you who are here on time. That's my philosophy too. Thank you. So, like how I have planned this session is about power and politics. So we'll have a brief discussion about power, the different types of power, and politics. Why do people indulge or involve themselves into politics? And then what are the coping mechanisms or defensive mechanisms, I can say, to manage this, and a little bit on impression management. Because all these three, they have some interlinkages within themselves. And all these three, every day in our day-to-day life, be it at the personal or at the professional end, or the societal context, we would be experiencing. And hence, it would be nice if we are aware of what is happening to us and what is that we need to do to manage that. It's not that we cannot have an escapism from that, we cannot run away from that, or we cannot avoid facing all those. But it's all like, what is that we need to do so that we would be able to manage and overcome it. So in that context, that would be the context in which we would be discussing. And then maybe we will just take up the case for discussion. It is a this was the shortest case I was able to locate, which could be discussed in multiple dimensions, the context of organizational behavior, power, politics, and also on leading and managing change in organizations. So in that context, we would be having few discussions on the case study I shared with you this morning. Is this fine? So power and politics, they go hand in hand. And we also have another term which is called as organizational politics, which also become a part of politics. And organizational politics is one topic that is researched or studied a lot in the past 15 years. 15 years it has been studied a lot, and we find it very significant in organizations. And studies reveal that organizational politics, like to say, there are gender wise differences with respect to the extent to which people indulge or engage in organizational politics, and men happen to involve more into politics when compared to women. So this is in the context in which they have carried out studies. So it's not like I am blaming, but in the context of what studies has been carried out, these were the results. So in other contexts, it could be otherwise too. So what is power and what is politics? So power is by virtue of the position that we hold, we try to get things done by others. Whatever you want to do, you don't do it, but by virtue of the position that you hold, or you have the ability, using that ability, you try to get a few or all of the works of yours to be executed or carried out for you by someone else. And more important is, you get the things done the way you want it. So the way you want it, within the time frame you want it. So that's more important. So what happens is, when A has power, he will try to influence the behavior of B such that B has no other option but to act or to do things according to the wish of A. So A can be a superior and B can be a subordinate. So the superior makes the subordinate do according to his or her wishes, which at times might be against the culture of the organization, or at times against the policies, the procedures or systems laid in the organization. So what are we to do at that times? Should we do as per the instructions or wishes of A or the superior, or is there at some point of time, will we be able to, or shall we, can we, should we tell a no? And power, we have different types of power we will be seeing. In that, the one of the most important one is the position power. So the position power is derived from a position, from a person's position in the organizational hierarchy. Just because, like the example we took, just because he is my senior or my superior, by virtue of the position that he holds in the organizational hierarchy, he has the ability to control all those who are reporting to him. So that is by virtue of the position they have. So in such cases, minimum would be the role that the subordinates will have the role to play. But there are also other types of powers where it is left to the discretion of the subordinate or the person who is control the control of the other person to react or to respond or to work in such a way that he comes out of the control of the other person. So we'll be discussing all those. So when we discuss about power, we cannot miss discussing about dependency. So let me put it this way, when will a person allow another person to exercise control over him? If we take A and B, so A is able to influence the behavior of B. So, and B also acts in accordance to the wishes of A. When will B give that chance or that situation to A to control his behavior? Hope my question is clear, friends.
Yeah, yes.
So when will B permit or allow A to exercise control over him, and B also acts in accordance to the wishes of A? We also, like B becoming a puppet in the hands of A. When will that happen? In what situations this will happen. So I think most of us will have at least, I believe, some 5 to 6 years of experience. So have you come across such a situation, and when do you think this will happen? When will B become a puppet in the hands of A? And B also agrees or decides to remain a puppet for quite some time. Friends, I think I'm not just talking to the screen, I'm talking to people. I believe that they are listening, there are people on the other side.
Yes,
It
madam.
would
Yes,
be
madam.
nice if I could have some responses.
It's very much.
I know.
Uh, hello, hello.
I know the session post lunch is difficult, but yet. Yes, sir, I'm
Hello.
listening. I'm waiting for answer.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
yeah, madam. We are. I am at least. I am very much with you. And whatever dependency and all these things you are talking about, I am going with you very fine. It's it's it's
Thank you.
it's all one. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. It would be nice if I could have a response for the discussion that we initiated, participation for the discussion that we initiated. When, according to you, when do you think B will become a puppet in the hands of A? In other sense to say, B, when will B act in accordance to the wishes of A? And
Yeah.
why should B decide upon that, agree upon that?
There are maybe 2-3 scenarios in which this may happen.
Yes,
First of all, say me as a person is not well competent, or I am lacking in skill. So
very
under
good.
under under such circumstances, I would like to please my boss. I would like to be in the good book of my boss by going for something extra, which may not require if I am having a skillful person in job. So
Job. Very good.
under such circumstances, A, that is my boss, is in a position to dictate me. This
Dictate
can
you.
be
Yes, very good, sir.
one situation. Second situation may be my ambition. So I am very much ambitious. I am skillful, yet I am ambitious. So in a short span of time, I want to reach in height. So I want to do something in such a way that initially let boss control me. Later I will control boss and reach to the height.
Okay. Very fine, sir. Very good. So these
Yeah.
becomes the
Thank
two
you.
motives. Very, very fine. Very well explained, sir. This was what I was also looking for, because such situations is what we would have experienced, not we becoming a party, but we would have witnessed all this at the workplace. So as you rightly said, it's because when we are not competent.
Madam,
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Madam, actually, if sometimes the boss is very much autocratic, he doesn't want to listen anybody. In that case, also, without the means desire of B, also they have to be listening to the I or the boss. It
No
also
other
happens
go.
in the organization. Huh.
Very true. Very true. It happens when the boss is autocratic, and it's also like even when autocratic, and if he is very stubborn, a personality where though he realizes that it is not appropriate, yet at times they will not accept.
Though the subordinate doesn't want, also they have to listen
They have to
because they
listen.
have
There
to
is no
take
other
the
option.
organization. Yes.
Very good. There is no other option. It happens. It happens, and especially like as you rightly mentioned, when there is an autocratic type of leadership style that is being followed, and people who have not still or people who are not still open, where they tend to look at their subordinates as slaves. Do what I say. So that the type of approach the East India Company or the British had when they ruled India. So that kind of approach also could be, that still it prevails, like the zamindari or the style of leadership where they tend to dictate and not willing to listen to what the other person says. In such situations, we absolutely, as you said, we had no other option but just to get along with it. So that becomes another. So, and these are all what, and having understood all this, what is that we need to do to manage, safeguard ourselves so that we don't become a party. So one or two instances is okay, but when there is a mutual benefit for both A and B, it is fine. When A alone gets benefited and B becomes a party and there is no, over a period of time when B realizes there is no benefit out of it, then in that situation, why should B allow that to happen further, and what is that B should do to come out of it or manage would also be the discussions that we would be having. So for that, we need to have a clarity on what is right and what is wrong and what could be done and what not could be. So that we would be discussing. So, and power, a person would be able to exercise when there is a dependency of the subordinate more on the superior. Say the example we had, A being the boss and B being the subordinate. When the two examples that participants shared, when I am not competent and when I'm more ambitious. So the degree of dependency that I am likely to have on my superior is likely to be higher, or is on the higher end. So the greater the dependency of a subordinate on the superior looking for a favor in turn, higher would be the power that A will tend to exercise on B. So that's why the concept of autonomy is gaining importance. So we need to be dependent. So we cannot be independent at the workplace. We need to work in a team. But we need to be very careful in defining and deciding what should be the level of autonomy within which we need to work, so that I don't step into the boundary of the other person, nor allow my superior or my peers to step into my boundary. Defining the territory and working within that would really help. So the more the dependence we become, not necessarily on the boss, it could be even on your team member, the more the dependence you tend to have, more would be the power that person is likely to exercise on us. And dependency will increase when the resources are important, when there is scarcity of resources and whatever is required is of importance, and when it is non-substitutable, when there is no replaceable. So in such cases, dependency will increase. The more the dependency we get into, higher would be the extent of power that would be exercised on that particular person. So when we look at this power and influence, it can flow from the middle level to the top level, and also from the other way. So normally a manager will try to achieve or will try to influence a superior, or at times the superior also will try to influence the manager. The two examples, the instances that we saw. Similarly, it also happens with the subordinates. So you try to achieve an upward influence based on your personal power. It is not by virtue of the hierarchy that you hold, it is because of the closeness that you tend to have with him, or doing certain odd jobs where you try to have an upward influence over your superior. Sorry. But it could also happen when it comes from a manager to a subordinate, by virtue of the position and personal power that you have, you try to have an influence on the subordinate. So the same thing will also, this goes in the organizational hierarchy up and down, but whereas it could also extend to your peers and to the outsiders with whom we are associated with. So we need to have a fair understanding of the context in which power gets exercised. And in the next slide, I would be just sharing few instances. We would be discussing about what is right or what could be done, or what can be avoided doing so. So working on Sundays, if your boss agrees, what do we do? Do we obey or we don't obey? Working on Sundays, working post office hours.
Yes, madam, but with a condition, like if the boss agrees or rather he becomes a part of it, then it's okay. But then he can't command that you have to work and that kind of things.
That is true. But how many times do we assertively tell a no to this? When they say, like, you are the right person to do, it's only you who will be able to do, this is something important, it has to be submitted, don't we agree and do that?
Yeah, madam, no problem. It depends on the kind of work and how frequently he's saying. It is all depends. But then it is not a, we have to agree with the boss, provided we feel that work to be done and there is some common purpose is to be achieved. In that sense, we have to agree.
We have to agree, but
ma'am, now I would like to give a different
yes, ma'am.
perspective here. Now,
Yes.
due to the technology advancement, because of the smartphones availability and more of social media interactions, this deputation of work and all becoming like 24/7. No matter
Exactly.
what kind of industry you are involved into it, because like every organization, every team, every departments have their own teams in WhatsApp, especially WhatsApp first of all. So deputing of work,
Exactly.
submitting of assignments or projects on time, everything is happening in your hand itself. So I think saying no becomes very tough that time, because you're in a team and you are given with the responsibility. If one member says no, the whole team becomes not performing well. So saying it no at this point of time, it's difficult, especially because of the social media, WhatsApp kind of reputation of work.
Yes, that exactly said that finally leaves with no time for self. And the organization also expects us to be literally 24/7. Anytime you get, any moment you get, they expect you to look, to see, respond, and do that. But if there had been little amount of planning properly and execution, will that happen working at the last moment? In one or two instances, it is okay that we do, but we should ensure that it doesn't become a regular practice. That is my point. There should be some point where we need to be assertive and tell no.
True, madam. True, madam.
So else you will never know how much of stress it will mount on you over a period of time. So world will not collapse at times. So it's all depending upon it and how we put it across. That becomes important. And I personally feel that at certain point of time, we need to learn to assertively tell a no. So shopping during lunch hours for the boss? No, it is my lunch time and I need to have that time for myself. Making coffee for the office people, for your peers, I don't think it's something wrong. We can, once in a while we can do, but not regular. So whatever has been fixed, say working for 40 hours or 30 hours, word processing, scheduling meetings, maintaining databases, at times paid overtime, all that is fine. At times, non-paid overtime is also good, but not on the longer run. So compose letters and reports for someone else, one or two, it's okay, but not beyond that. Again, personal works, fudging of accounts, for all those, it would be nice if we tell them no, so that they will also have a clue that we are competent, we have the required skills, and we stand by that, and this is what I am. This is what I am. We need to establish our own identity at the workplace and not becoming a party. If we become a party for one, then we will have to become a party for everyone. And there is always a differentiate between leadership and power. So these are two things that at times it crosses the boundaries, like how we have the Venn diagram, the leadership and the power, two circles. So these two overlap, and the extent to which they overlap, at times it becomes like one getting superimposed on the other. There is no very difficult to demarcate between a leadership and power, but there are few factors on which we would be able to differentiate these two. So leadership, a leader, when they are focusing or working in a team, they mainly focus on achievement of the goals. But whereas power, they use power as a means to achieve goals by either threatening or some kind of tactics that they use to achieve it. And when it comes to leadership, you look at the goal. They have a unified goal. So the entire team has a unified goal, and they work. Everyone contributes and work towards that. But whereas it only depends upon the follower dependency. To what extent the people are dependent on the superior, that becomes that comes to the top, or that becomes the main agenda. And then it focuses on influencing downwards. We call it as flowing from top to bottom. But this, it can go lateral as well as bottom to up. So either not necessarily from top to down, it goes even laterally as well as upward influence, the one that we saw 2 slides back. And research have indicated that a leader tries to adopt a style, a unique style of his, such that the relationship that he has with his followers become more and more strong. So they try to identify, and they evolve with their own unique style, where they maintain consistency wherever they are, whatever be the situation, and that really attracts the entire team of people towards that particular leader, and they come forward to work for him. But whereas when it comes to power, it's all about identifying different types of tactics so that they fit into or meet the requirements. And when it comes to formal power, there are three different types, or 3 bases it could be said as. So formal power is by virtue of the position an individual holds in the organization. So the 3 types are coercive, reward, and legitimate. So coercive power is I try to threaten or use fear as an incentive and make the other person do, or influence the other person to complete a particular task or an assignment by threatening or by using fear. So that may be at the initial stage, nascent stage in the organization, it will work. And it will also work when we are not sure about our own competencies and skills. When we have our own doubts, and the more we tend to extend dependency, the more will be the extent of coercive power that would be enforced upon us. The second is reward. It goes the other way. So you do this work, I'll be rewarded. So looking at the reward is what the quantum or the type of reward that it could be either monetary or non-monetary reward. Using that as a base is what they try to exercise their power. And legitimate power is the form by virtue of the position that they hold in that particular hierarchy. They will be able to exercise power. So legitimate power, we have no escape out of it. But coercive and reward power, coercive power, they normally try. Say, like, if you are not performing well and it is found that your performance appraisal scores are not so good, we have not seen you improving over a period of time, because of, if you don't improve this quarter or the next quarter, I may not be able to give you increments, or you may be terminated from your services. So that normally happens. So maybe you are far below our expectations, and so you will have to work towards meeting the goals or expectations of the organizations. So the fear of losing job is what people tend to work. So rewards, some are motivated by monetary and some by non-monetary. That depends on. So that's why, depending upon the nature of the subordinate or the peer, the type of power that a person tries to exercise also will vary. So what suits whom, they tend to make an analysis, and that type of control is what they try to exercise. They will be exercising. Excuse me, Aruna. Sorry. So there's also another base of power, that is the personal power. It is the individual's own unique characteristic. So when expert power, when I'm knowledgeable, or when I have some special skills which none in the organization possesses, so by virtue of that, I'll get power. Say, at this juncture, I thought I should mention this. I think you would be aware that ours is a for women institution located in Coimbatore, and we have a professor by named Balasubramaniam. He is about 77 years old, and he is with us for almost 14 years now, with wide experience in the industry as well as in the academia. So, he has wide network, contact, a voracious reader. So the level of knowledge, exposure, skills that he has is far beyond what others have in our institution. So if at all, if it comes to any crucial decision or critical decision that we take, we have a word with him, we have a discussion whereby how much ever we are prepared, he would be able to touch upon a perspective which we would have missed. 10 people or 15 people would have worked on that particular concept or that particular document, but he had always been having some dimension which we have overlooked. So by that knowledge that he has, that exposure, that experience, that skill he has gained power, and we become dependent on him, so that we want to excel or we want to do a best kind of job. So that also will happen, but all these years he has never ever, though he has that special skill or knowledge or that competency I can call, he has never ever tried to influence a subordinate, made someone dependent, do what he wanted. That he has never used it in the other wrong sense. So the more and more we work with him, the more and more we gain knowledge, and the more and more more respect is what we have towards him. So that also happens, and it's all how we equip ourselves to be to that particular, to reach that particular level. And the next would be the referent power. So because of the desirable resources or personal traits that they have, we go to them. Maybe he is very helpful, or he has ideas or networks or contacts which we think might be useful for him. He would be able to influence someone else to get things done for us. The helping kind, the empathetic approach that he has, that also could be very well utilized. Where there is no give and take, it's only give, it's only help, no take. So these are few of the power tactics that individuals adopt or try. In other words, to say, individuals try any of these 9 techniques. Yes, Dr. Prabhakaran, you have something to share with us? So we may try to adopt any of these 9 techniques, or at times it could be a combination of this. And it has been good, it has been effective, and it has been successful. It has been tested and tried over a period of time, and that's how they have evolved at this 9. Yes? I think someone had a question. Shall we go ahead with the session?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Yes. So the 9 tactics are legitimacy. So which is an appeal that we make based on the power or position that the person holds. A superior to whom we have an appeal. He holds, because due to the hierarchy, he holds a position, and we have an appeal, or we seek a favor from him. Or it could be even rational persuasion, where we try to convince a person when there is a valid reason, when it is logical, when it is realistic, we try to convince the person with the reason behind it, because at times people fail to understand why a particular person is behaving in that particular way, or why we are trying to do this. So in that cases, there is nothing wrong. So we try to spend some time with them, talk and make them understand. And inspirational appeals. So like it's all using emotions. We saw emotions, moods, the ideas, the values. With all those, you try to build up and make them understand. It's all putting across in a very nice way. And consultation. So it is like the participative type of leadership, that we invite everyone into the process of decision making, into the planning, so that we arrive at a consensus, and then we work ahead with it. So these 3 types, the rational persuasion, the inspirational appeals, and the consultation, these 3 techniques have been found to be the most effective ones, where there is minimum exercise of power and there is minimum pressure, because the other person understands why he or she has to do that, why they will have to do that for themselves or for the organization. And when we involve everyone buys the idea why we are saying so, and that becomes the easiest way to get things across. And it's most important is we also listen to what the other people, the points or the ideas that the other people have, and together is what we arrive at a consensus. And it could also be an exchange type, where I do this for you, you do this for me. So like a barter exchanging in implied promise. Say like how we normally at times we tell our kids, if you get so many marks in this or this much percentage, I'll buy you this. Do we? Did we experience such situations?
Sorry, madam.
Is
Sorry,
that
sorry.
right? See, it is exchange. I do this for you, you do this for me. So we we tend to tell our kids, if you score so many marks in this exam, I will get you this.
Yeah, it is one kind of exchange. Yeah, it is one kind of exchange, which even happen in organizational context also.
Yes, very well it happens. Is it right or wrong?
Now here, if you ask my perspective, I guess we have to understand the context. If I am doing something in exchange with someone, but that is within the legitimacy of that act, then I believe there is not anything wrong. But if it is for undue advantage or something like that, or violating some rules of the organization, then definitely it is wrong.
Then definitely it's wrong. And when it doesn't violate the rules or norms, and when there is mutual benefit and it doesn't harm anyone else, it is fine.
Exactly.
It is fine. And that's how a normal system also works. And personal appeals. So referring to friendship or loyalty and putting across a request to this. So I don't know anyone else, why don't you do it for me? So that becomes a personal appeal that we have to them. And ingratiation is when you try to talk good things about them, bring them to a good mood, create an environment or an ambience, keeping them happy, and then you put across the request to them and get it done. So this also is bound to happen. And pressure. So it is demanding compliance, putting them undue pressure, but that in the long run, it is not, it has not been successful. That's what I would say. It has not been successful, and it is not a healthy culture. It's not a healthy organizational culture, and it will not be a healthy work environment. And coalitions is getting support from all the people in the organization for a particular cause that we stand for. So these are the 9 different tactics. So depending upon the situation, not necessarily one, you can adopt a combination of this which best suits. And when we just look at it, the direction in which it has an upward, downward, or a lateral influence, only rational persuasion, it has an upward influence, and your rational, inspirational, pressure, consultation, ingratiation, exchange, and legitimacy, it's all the downward influence. But whereas lateral, when it comes with your peers, downward influence is with your subordinates, and upward influence comes with your supervisors, and lateral influence comes with your peers. So rational persuasion, consultation, ingratiation, exchange, legitimacy, personal appeals, and coalitions, all this, it comes into lateral. So the only one which all the whether it's an upward, downward, or lateral influence is rational persuasion. So politics. So how would we define politics? What is politics? So what is politics? How will we define politics?
Madam, it's tricks using the power, using the power.
Using tricks, using power, okay. Political behavior, okay, it is using power. When do we involve in that political behavior? When do we involve in that political behavior?
we make decisions.
When do we involve in political behavior?
Make decisions. When we take decisions, the government take decisions.
When we take decisions,
When the
okay.
government, parties.
When the government. So this is not that politics.
Madam, desire
Not
of
the
power
politics
also.
related to the country. This is politics at the political behavior, politics at the workplace. And this politics, the political behavior at the workplace is is an extension of, you can say it is power in action. That's what I have put. It's power in action. It is the execution of power. So where it's exercising power at the workplace for the benefit of one or a few of the people, whereby it leads to a few being denied or being affected by that. It is, we also call it as politicking. So that is also very prevalent at the workplace. And not because of it's an informal type of action that they do, informal activities which they do, whereby trying to influence, attempt, or trying to take undue advantage within the organization for themselves or for a few of the members in the organization, and that people who are in power or exercising power, or people who are in the stage of dependency, will involve in political behavior. So like the best example that could be cited is complaining, always complaining about another person, then not bypass the organizational hierarchy by the reporting team. You just try to surpass and get it done from the other person. You don't follow the organizational hierarchy. So these are few things that could be witnessed in the organization, and that is legitimate power by virtue of the position. Illegitimate power is whistleblowing, symbolic protests, sabotage. All these are the illegitimate political power being displayed. The ways in which we display this illegitimate political behavior. And politics, we have no escape from politics at the workplace. So these are few factors that influence the political behavior.
But
Say,
madam,
the political behavior, it could. Yes, yes, sir.
Madam, is it that only politics in an organization done in a negative way? Like suppose I'll tell you there is a employee union and there are good employees, they belong to that employees union. So they also do politics, but that for a positive cause. Sometimes, I'm not saying in a general. So is that only politics in organization done for the negative aspect of it, or also for the positive sometimes?
It could also be done on the positive aspect also, sir. But the number of instances, if we look at, it is very, very few. Say for the genuinity or for the benefit of the larger team, if we are doing it, it is fine. But that we find that it is the studies report, not me, studies report that is very less. So politics, it could be done for the good as well as for the bad.
Okay, madam. No, I just said it because
yes.
Sometimes in lower level they do the politics to remove a person on the top level, those who are not actually behaving good or something like those, but they have to do little politics in the grassroots level. That's what I was saying.
Of course, that's very, very true. That's very, very true. Then, Darren, I actually had that point also, but I removed it. I also had a slide on that. Gender discrimination, sexual harassment at the workplace. When there is sexual harassment and gender discrimination at the workplace, people unite together and they try to create a situation to trap. I would better use the word trap that particular person who is involving, exercising undue power in an unwanted way. So that is for good.
True,
That
Mani,
happens in the context of sexual harassment and gender discrimination. So in such cases, when it is done, it is for a good cause and that has to be supported. And so for that, you use one of the 9 tactics to get the support of all your members. You make them understand, and then only at times people realize how each one of them have been affected by that particular person in one way or other. It's all when we open it up. Unless we open it up, nothing will come. It's all about who will bell the cat. So when someone starts blowing it up, then everything will start coming, and then we all work together. So in that case, it is not wrong. It is not wrong, but it should be ensured that all work together and there is no black sheep in that team. So that becomes very, very important. But if you look at research, this political behavior has always been studied or presented only in the negative connotation or context. There are very, very few studies where these positive aspects have been studied or data relating to that has been extracted and published. It is two sides of a coin. And then now let's look into the factors that influence the political behavior. It could be the individual factors as well as the organizational factors. So the organizational factors is when they are reallocating the resources. So in that case, like the resources are in scarce or in shortage, then people try to influence so that they get the maximum benefit. Say when they are dividing teams or assigning members to a team or recruiting people, or when you have target set and you want a nice good team to execute or to carry out the goals, the targets that were set for you, we always tend to try to influence people and have the best. And when there are promotional opportunities, then there is low trust, role ambiguity. This is something very, very important. When we don't have clarity on what is expected out of it, then when we don't know what our role is, when there is no one to guide us what has to be done. So in such cases, and similarly when we don't have a clarity on the performance evaluation system or on the roles and responsibilities, when there is not proper reward practices, democratic decision making, the first point that we this not the first part, that was autocratic, the democratic decision making when it comes into. So we'll try to influence the decision making person with our own ideas so that we tend to get benefit out of it or to a larger group of people. High performance pressures when they are there, and the self-serving senior managers where they are more self-centered. And similarly, the individual factors, when there are too high expectations of the success, when they want a shortcut to reach the top, when there are too career ambitious, and you have a word called career plateaus. So career plateaus is you find that the possibility of you moving up in the career becomes stagnant, or you find you will have to struggle too hard to move to the next step in your career, is what we call it as a career plateau. So in such cases, when you find a career plateaus, we are likely to involve in political behavior so that you try to, it's an approach that you involve in, or a tactic that you adopt, so that you tend to break the career plateau and move high, surpass your senior and move high, or try to grow laterally. Instead of horizontally, you try to grow laterally. So in such cases also, we can experience or witness political behavior. That's another important dimension. And then organizational investment, how much do they look upon? and then what type of personality they belong to when they are more of an internal locus of control, internal person. You have internal locus of control and external locus of control. So when the person is of more of internal locus of control, then it's likely to be. And then high self monitors, more self-centered, more self-focused. So in these dimensions of factors, the level of political behavior that would be displayed can lie on a continuum from low to high, and mostly we look for a favorable outcomes, rewards, monetary or non-monetary, or if something goes wrong, let's have the minimum or no punishment or escape from that. So in such situations is what we tend to exhibit this. And then
Madam, hello, madam,
yes.
that internal locus of control is self-centered, or I mean, how do you say it external, and how do you give the difference? Internal locus of control and yeah.
It's
Correct,
all
yeah.
how a person is driven. It's all how a person is driven. Are you driven by yourself, or are you driven from externally? Internal locus of control is I am driven by myself. I don't need someone else from outside who would be driving me to do what I have to do.
Okay,
I decide what has to be done, what I'll have to do, and I go in that progress. That is internal locus of control. From where do you derive your motivation? Is it from external or from internal?
Yeah, got it, madam. Thank you.
Yes. And how do people perceive organizational politics, and what is the response to them becomes more of decreased job satisfaction, increased anxiety and stress, which it becomes very difficult to express to others, leaving organization and reduced performance. So decreased job satisfaction, you don't have, but it's not that you decide to leave an organization, and this is detrimental for the individual, not to the organization. And increased turnover, it becomes a loss to the organization, reduced performance also. The first two is more to the individual, whereas the next two is more towards the organization. And defensive behavior. So what do? When we perceive politics as a threat, we involve in defensive behavior. Say like when we try to harm an animal or hit an animal. So it tries to, when it realizes that there is a threat for it, it tries to attack us, threaten us, and to the possible extent, it's all the behavior that they exhibit to protect themselves. So like those, we also involve or take up defensive behaviors or defensive reactions. So these defensive behaviors, they could help you only in the short run, but not in the long run. So much of stress it will lead within an individual when we try to prolong trying to manage, trying to escape, going around and round, maybe for some time, but never in the long run. So the types of defensive behavior could be avoiding action. Enna sonnalum, we don't listen, we don't do what it is, as if nothing has, we have not heard, we have not understood, we tend to remain. And avoiding blame, so that we try to justify what we have done, what we have done is right from our point of view, or pass the blame on the other person. Then avoiding change. We don't, as if we are not capable of, we will not be able to manage it, we are not competent. So such type of defensive behaviors is what we try to display, but never ever try to adopt defensive behaviors. Maybe for the short run it might be helpful for you, but in the long run it becomes it hits us, it hits back on us, I would say. It will hit back on us. And the last point for discussion is impression management. This we have witnessed and we would be witnessing. So how are we going to attempt to control the impressions from others? And few people, I would say, they are so good in impression management that it's almost like having a split personality. What they are is not what they project. There is a deep they inside, a deep I inside, which I try to hide it. It may be because of my incompetency or not willing to take responsibility, or it could be, it could be any number of reasons, but I want to be goody for everyone. I want to be so nice and so good. So even if a person does something very grave, I tend to say, is it so? I don't see harm in this. I don't think it is wrong. So that kind of approach is what we would tend to give them. So that is, so few people, I would say, they are really so good in this and they train themselves. But is it right or wrong? I just don't have a say on that. One side, if we look at it, we may say ethically it is right. For the other person, we'll say ethically it is not right, because it's all how we look at it. But we are living in a world where it's a rat race. We keep running without knowing for what we are running and where we are running and where we should stop. So in such situations, for survival, to have collegiality, to avoid confrontations, we may have to exhibit little amount of practice, little amount of impression management techniques also. So the 7 techniques that are normally adopted are conformity. So where we try to accept, take the behavior of others, look at who are the people around it, and we see that we gel along with it. And then trying to give excuses for something that we have done, what we have done is inappropriate. And when we find that something undesirable has happened, that we just say sorry. Slap and then tell sorry. Unknowingly I did. So when I say unknowing, unintentionally is the right word that people use. Unintentionally I did. But they would have had an intention, but we can never go and find out what it is. So that is another technique that is widely practiced. Self-promotion. So when it is like creating a hype and seeking attention from others. So whatever, it could be very, very small, but they tend to give a big hype. Say, I would say, this is my personal opinion, correct me if I am wrong. All the postings and the promotions and what people write on social media, it's all only self-promotion. I have been here, I have been there, I have seen all this. This is what all I have achieved, I have accomplished. They want everyone to look at them, create an illusion. That's how I view social media as. This is my personal take on that. So whoever don't derive satisfaction, what they have done is what they go in for self-promotion. Yes, sir?
No, true, absolutely true, madam. You're right, I guess.
So if you have done a reasonable good work, and if you are satisfied with the work, what you have done, if you are happy with it, if you are contented, you need not blow your own trumpet to the entire world. Where you need to tell, if you tell, that is enough. What you have done, it is enough. If who all is concerned knows that. So, but now we live in a virtual world where we don't have a face-to-face interaction, but we are all connected virtually. So looking at what others are doing, we also do things to create a good image in the society in which we are in. So I normally look at those who are not those who are not deriving that satisfaction from within what they have done, or if they feel that they are missing something, is what they go in more of self promotion. So that it is to make others know that they are capable, they are competent, they are the best. They earn so much, they have traveled so much. That's how they keep doing it. And flattery, giving so much of excessive compliment so that the other person likes. If the boss or the other person gets laid off for this, likes this, then that's how they talk, talking only all the goods, so that you try to convince or be always in the good books of him, and doing favors to others, and association, whereby you strengthen and you tend to defend each other. It's complementing and supplementing each other. So that becomes another technique that is widely followed, and that is good actually at the workplace. And so these are the few points or thoughts that I thought I'll discuss with you. So any clarifications with what we discussed?
No, madam, it's fine.
Yes. Coercive and reward power, like the carrot and the stick approach to motivation, it becomes an illusion. Personal benefit, that's true. Good. So if it is so, shall we take up the small case that I shared with you for discussion?
Yeah, sure, madam.
The
Sure.
assumption that you all have gone through the case.
Yeah, sure, madam.
So how many, at least, how many of you have gone through the case? Even if you don't respond, if you turn on your microphones, I can have a count of how many had gone through the case. As of now, I can see 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Good, good. So it goes to, I think, at least 1/4 of the spec will have. So shall we go ahead with the discussion of the case?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So from where shall we start? Who will start? Giving a synopsis of the case. I would like any one of the participant to present a synopsis of the case.
Can I attempt?
Yes, yes.
Okay, fine.
If Joel just who starts and everyone will join, sir. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Actually, what I got from this case is actually a classic case of leader follower, that is a superior subordinate relationship, where
Yes.
an ambitious as well as some say quick progression and all these things from a subordinate, how it actually works within the relationship, leading to organizational cultural problem as well as organizational climatic problem. Hello?
I think there is
some audio is
someone, some kid is reading on the other end. I request that participant to mute their microphone, please.
Madam, some Dr. Kumar Abhishek is.
Then yeah, now it's fine, I guess.
Yes.
Now it's fine. Yeah. So
Yes,
what
sir.
I was telling, it is a classic example of when how the relationship between superior and subordinate comes under stress, and from there it actually affect the organizational culture also, and organizational
Exactly.
climate also. Now here what I find that the supervisor is very much caring, is he's trying to nurture that new joinee who is hardly 15 months in the organization, and gradually going with all those stuffs of, say, technical work, routine work, and then side by side strategic work, one by one, step by step approach. However, that impatient in that subordinate, as well as that aim, ambition working in her, so she wants something charismatic to carry out in the organization, so that she get noticed and she gets go to some lead role. So, and she believed that to age 26 is sufficient enough to proceed for further in upper roles in an organization. So now in this situation, what actually she did is, she talked about that software and all these issues, and from the software, she opined about changing that software in working, and then she not only did this in a normal manner, she bypassed her superior and went to the next immediate boss, and not only that, she also collided the mind of others. So what happened now? In one hand, you are suppressing your boss. In another hand, you are actually creating some organizational disturbances. So everything is creating a chaotic situation. So maybe one person's
situation.
yes, maybe one person's greed, I can say greed or whatsoever word I use term, one person's impatience, it is going to create a chaotic situation in the organization. I treat it in that way only. And my reason for that is, it is hardly 15 months for that lady in the organization. It's not even 2 3 years, 4 years also.
That's true, sir. So
Yeah.
very nicely you have presented the synopsis of the case. I would be glad if other participants also can add up points if they have to this.
In fact, yeah, madam, just in addition, hello.
No, madam, I think absolutely beautifully explained. At the same time, Grace is actually being a good employee. He became a victim of, like you said, this power game. I mean, the Grace, the employee
Yes,
was he became a victim of that power play, or maybe that kind of things. What he said, absolutely I agree. I mean, I'm just adding to that.
Yes, sir.
Madam, what Manish said, but I mean, I completely agree. Just adding to that, I think Grace, the person in that case study, has become a victim of the power game of the organization. I mean, all upward and downward movement.
Yes. So this is something that we witness or we have seen, is it?
Yes, madam, that's what.
That normally happens. Okay.
Yes, correct.
So I thought like we can just open up few questions for discussion. So what do you think? What are the things that Grace should understand about herself? Has Grace understood what she is? What is that she would be able to do? Does she have a thorough understanding of herself?
Yes, ma'am. Partly, she has thorough understanding, but maybe, as I said, she could not able to transfer his thought process to others. Maybe.
Yes. So maybe the way how she has expressed or she could have expressed could be better. So maybe
Yeah,
I'll put it this way.
I
Yes.
think so, madam.
So,
I think so.
I think so. Okay. So I'll put it in this way. So what do you think? How was the relationship between Landon and Grace in the early days?
Madam, it was good, but then over the period of time, maybe that complacency crept into our mind. I mean, job stagnation, or maybe, but then in early days it was good. Nothing. I mean, both had understanding.
So as you said, at the early stages, they were good, helping each other, listening to each other. It was all fine.
In fact,
But over the period, like their relationship has entirely strained towards the end.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
madam.
Madam, can I?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. In fact,
Yes,
what I
sir.
find is, it is actually a mentorship kind of relationship at the beginning. Even if you try to find out the
Okay.
case, in this case, it was told in one instance, she actually demeaned one of the customer as telling less important, and that blame and as well as pain is also carried out by the supervisor.
Yes.
So
Very
actually,
true,
it is
sir.
the mentorship. Initially, he actually tried to mentor and give every sort of support. But after certain point of time, that is perhaps I will say one sorts of ambitions and all which worked in that lady, because this case is not even given us any clue that that supervisor tried to exploited the employee. There is no such clues also.
Employee.
Yeah,
No such
there is
clues
no
are given. Very true, sir.
exactly. So I can say
Clues.
it is actually her ambition that led her to proceed, that I should disrupt something in such a way that I can come up as a hero. And if I will able to come up as a hero, my importance will be raised, and then I will come up in good positions and top posts.
This
Madam, she also started. Madam, she also started delegating the her job to somebody else. In the sense, as he rightly said, maybe she had some ambitions to achieve.
Ambitions to achieve. When she was in the initial stages of the career, she had to rely more on the experienced person, so that she comes to know, she gets a whole clue of how to work on. It could either be a mentor kind of a relationship, or it could also be a coach kind of relationship. So there is a slight difference between the mentor kind of relationship and the coach kind of relationship. So in the mentor kind of relationship, where the mentor helps the person to realize, to recognize by herself solutions, what has to be done, what would be the right route, just giving broad outlines within which they try to work and come out. So when it tends to be a coach kind of an approach, where whenever there is problem, or it's all giving them advices at the right time, so that they are able to do their best. So where the ability to realize one's own self, that possibility becomes very, very less. So it could like when you look at the case, there had been instances where it was a mentor kind of approach, and it's also instances where it was a coach kind of approach. So, and both of them, like they had a good understanding of the needs of each other, which it was good at the earlier stages, but over the period of time, it changes. Over the period of time, it is likely to change. I would say it is likely to change. Say that normally we can relate that to the career stages an individual passes through. So they normally we say there are 4 main career stages. What are they? 4 main career stages. We call it as early, mid and late career. No, not that one. So 4 main career stages. See, the 4 main career
Is it about,
stages are.
Is it about
Yes,
protein
sir.
career and boundaryless career?
No, ma'am.
Not that.
Not that. So normally they say the 4 main career stages are establishment, advancement, maintenance, and withdrawal.
Madam, repeat, please.
Establishment,
Yes.
advancement,
Yes, madam.
maintenance,
Yes, madam.
and withdrawal.
Okay, please throw some light on that.
So establishment is when we normally, that is the beginning stage of our career. So when you join a company, when you join an organization, you have a role, right? So we would try to do the best in that particular role so that we gain knowledge, we gain competence, I would say, knowledge, skill, ability, competence. We have clarity on our role. It gives an opportunity to explore what our capabilities are, and thereby you start performing. You get a clue of what you will have to do, and you start performing in your role that was assigned to you. So once if you have that clarity, or you get a hold of what is expected out of you, what is that you will have to do, you start progressing drastically. It's almost like the exponential, the curve that we have, the normal curve. So the initial stages, when you are establishing, the growth remains slow, steady, small baby steps is what we would do. So once if we have got a hold or grip in our particular job, what is expected, what we will have to do, then we start progressing very fast, drastically. The growth would be exponential. And once you have understood, you have done all your best beyond a particular limit when it comes to, and your late mid careers, you would feel like maybe in your 45s or in your 50s, you will see it's enough. Let me do what I am doing it for the rest of my life. That becomes your maintenance stage. So some kind of saturation, the quest, all those, it settles. You will reach a stage of saturation where you will tend to just keep going, not taking up too many additional responsibilities, not willing or able to stretch beyond and work. So, or maybe you find there is nothing more to explore or to do in that particular job. That becomes your maintenance stage. And once when everything settles or saturates or towards the end of your career stage, the last stage is withdrawal, where you tend to shrink up your responsibilities, not taking so much. Just what is given is what you will tend to do. Nothing, not stretching your boundaries, not even thinking. You're not able to, and you will not be able to manage, accept, change. So all those comes in the last stage. So these are the 4 main career stages. So depending on the career stage in which we are, the type of relationship that we tend to have with our peers and with our boss is also likely to vary. So when it is in the establishment stage, it is the quest to know, learn more. You want to develop competence in the new position. You want to self-promote that you have done a lot. So you want to be known as the icon. You want to be the role model for others. So that's how you will, so for doing all that is what you would be almost like a creeper to cling along with someone, so that your needs are met. In turn, the organization's requirements are also met. So that is, that would be mostly in the establishment stage. And then, so like when Grace was in the establishment stage, the relationship that she had with Landon was all fine. But when it came to the advancement stage, when you start growing far better, you want to grow high, you become more ambitious, then when you find certain things that hurdles that you come along the way, you don't accept it. You feel that you are more competent, you are capable, you can do much better than her, and you try to overpower them. So that would lead to strain in the relationship. That was what happened towards the end. That's likely to happen. So that's where the leader-follower relationship normally has a mutual dependence. So when there is high power in the leader role, the subordinate is likely to be more dependent. And more dependent, and when the exercise of power goes beyond a limit, which the subordinate feels is intolerable, then it goes either consciously or unconsciously or subconsciously rebelling against the boss. So that was that's what we call it as emotional reaction. How do we do you respond or do we react? But mostly we react, and then is what we tend to respond. So like Grace admitted that she did not particularly like people telling her what to do. So it was a statement that you can look in the case. So she doesn't like that. Others pointing out this is what she has to do. And then when Grace said that Landon is not allowing her, is like a hurdle, is like a roadblock. That's the right word. So not allowing her to progress. And Grace wanted to make Landon realize that the workplace was not a dictatorship. So when the leader tries to exercise high power, we feel that it's a dictator, autocratic type of leadership, a dictatorship role that is being played. So these are few observations. And so if we want to, the key point is, if we want to progress, go up, it is more important for us to realize who we are, what we are. The awareness of self, we call it as. Self-awareness is more important or is more critical for us to progress further, and we should always know what are the boundaries within which we need to operate. Maybe your boss might keep his door open, but there is a limit or an extent to which you will have to step in. Like normally they say, when a subordinate and a boss, when they together go for a walk, the subordinate, though the boss has invited you for a walk along with him, the subordinate should always be conscious that he or she walks one step behind the boss, never in line with the boss. Consciously, at least one step, if not too far off, at least one step behind the boss. Such a kind of relationship will hold good, will sustain, will survive in the long run, where the boss will always remember that he is on the hierarchy. You respect, you limit yourself to the space where you will have to be. So that is